Good morning. So I'm going to continue on with their Sumerian badge that's focused off this Create, Build, Learn for this month. I did not get around to doing any of these videos last week, and I apologize. Last week I attended OET sequence in Columbus. So I was there for 2 days, and then just the preparation of going there, just preparation for attending and participating in the event. Because I did do a little playground activity, focusing on one of the things I focused on was AWS Educate, and also focused on something called Metaverse, which you may have seen me talk about otherwise. And but so I was prepping for that and just didn't get around to focusing on these modules. So I apologize. So we're in module 2, if I remember correctly. And we had gotten to this part, and then we was getting to the point where we were going to learn about the services within AWS and some of the resources and services that help make Sumerian activities work. So let's see. Okay, getting back to where we need to go. Okay, so this is where we got to last time. So I already had a video talking about everything. You saw me do a fast track through. So now here we're getting into the nitty gritty, so to speak, of some of the services within AWS. So it's IAM and Cognito. That might be a typo. Now I'm curious, have I been saying it wrong, or is that a typo? Okay, anyways, and so IAM and Cognito, and S3 resources, CloudFront, Poly and Lex, and utilizing the SDK. So let's focus on IAM Incognito. So let's go ahead and look at this video. I'm going to click on that little arrow because it's going to open up into another tab. So what this takes us is to something called the documentation, and sometimes they're called white papers. I've been known to call them white pages just because I guess I'm thinking of the phone book that used to exist years ago. But so what this is talking about IAM policies for Sumerian. So you can access, you can use AWS Identity and Access Management, which is IAM, to grant Sumerian permissions to users and compute resources in your account. IAM controls access to AWS at the API level to enforce permissions uniformly and securely. So basically what that means, you as a developer, if you're the owner of a particular Sumerian app that you're creating, and this applies for everything in AWS, then you can designate who has access to, the person who has access to, who has the authority, and then who has the accessibility to access certain services within AWS. And the reasons that's important is because, depending upon the size of your organization that you're creating, then you might have multiple people with multiple needs to access different services within AWS. And for example, say you have somebody in human resources, say you have a big enough firm, so you have somebody in human resources and you have a developer, okay? Just going to try to keep it as far away as possible. So human resources, they have the things that they need to access. They need to access payroll, they need to access benefits, they need to access some confidential information about you, like your social security number and so on and so forth. Okay, human resources needs to access that. The developer, somebody who's actually developing Sumerian or any other projects, they don't need all that access. They don't need to know how much everybody else in the company makes. They don't need to know all the details that human resources have on somebody. It's just not relevant for the position. It's not needed, and it's a violation of confidentiality, right? Now, for the developer, what they do have access to is the coding. Anything that's needed with the coding and the infrastructure to create the apps or the experiences that they're creating. That's what they need access to. And there might be varying levels of it, but we're just going to keep it simple. So they just need access to the coding and the infrastructure to deploy anything, any changes that are made. Human resources doesn't need that, okay? Human resources does not need access to the infrastructure. They don't need access to the code. They don't need access to be able to make changes to the code. They don't need access to any of that. So that is kind of considered, the concept of least privilege. I think that's what it is. The least privilege, the concept of least privilege, which basically means you just need the minimum number of access to resources to do your job. HR has a function, developer has a function. They both have their own unique jobs, and you try to separate them to prevent any potential, whether it's accidental or intentional, mishaps, sharing of information, putting a bug, inserting a virus, whatever. You want to keep those separate. So what IAM does, it allows, and it does this for all of AWS services, not just Sumerian. It allows the segmentation. Like HR has their role, the developer has their role. And there's already some that are pre-built within AWS platform, like libraries, I guess you could use. That's the terminology. There's already some pre-built profile libraries, and you can just use that, based off, if they're going to be Sumerian, like what do they need for Sumerian, and so on and so forth. Or you can customize it. So that's what IAM. It's identity and access management. It's managing who has access, the identity, and what kind of access, the identity of the person and what they have access to. So IAM managed policies for Sumerian. So to make granting permissions easy, IAM supports managed policies for each service. A service can update these managed policies with new permission when it releases new APIs. So here is, you can see a sample of what the code would be to provide Sumerian full access. So to add a managed policy to an IAM user group or role, you can open in the IAM console. I'm going to click on that. Okay, I was in a lab earlier for AWS Academy, so I'm going to get out of that. I'm going to get logged back in. This is my AWS account, like my personal AWS account. This is not the Academy. This is not AWS Educate. Okay, so the way to access IAM, it's just like with anything else on, oh shoot, I'm sorry. It's just like with anything else with on the console. So let me kind of go back there because I did fast track that. So you can find all the services within AWS Management Console. You can go to IAM. Okay, so this is, like I said, my personal AWS account. So I have some things activated, some things I haven't. The users are pretty much right now me, myself, and I, so it's not been really too big of an issue for me. Let me see if I can go ahead and log out and try to log in through the Sumerian AWS Educate. So I'm going to pause this for a second. Okay, I'm back. I'm not sure this is going to work. We're just going to go ahead and try it. So I'm back on the AWS Educate platform, which you should see something similar to this. I don't think you'll see the exact same thing, but hopefully on the top right-hand corner, you'll see something called AWS Account. If you click on that, and then you start your account. So you may see that things that starter account, you may not. It's I think they expire every so often. So you just need to, again, I'm an educator in this capacity. So as a student, it may be a little bit different. So I'm going to have AWS console. Okay. So let me just get out of, I'm going to close this tab. So you can see I'm now in the lab, AWS account lab. And so you should see something similar to this whenever you're accessing it through your AWS Educate account. So let's go to IAM again. Okay. So, okay, so something to remember is that whenever you are doing anything through AWS Educate, accessing the console, there may be some limitations on what you can access, or may be some things that just doesn't want to work right. If you remember from what it looked like on my personal one, it didn't really have this. Actually had my information, and then this is fine. This is something I can update, but just be aware. You may come into a couple of things that might be a rub in regards to utilizing this. My recommendation is ultimately to just go ahead and sign up for an actual free AWS account. It's a free tier, and just to give you an opportunity to play with it. Just make sure if you start playing with the stuff, you delete it or turn it off or terminate it, whichever is the correct terminology, because you will accrue charges accidentally. But just be aware to turn it off if you turn it on, just kind of like, lights. Turn it off, turn it on, turn it off. So let's kind of go back into what this was. Okay, so to add a managed policy to an IAM user group or role, open the IAM console, open the second. Okay, IAM console, open the row associated with your instance profile. So we haven't gotten that far into it yet. So let's kind of go back up into just creating it. So let's back up to, was it this one? Oh, there we go. So let's see what this video actually says. Hold on.
Database and application services in the AWS cloud. IAM uses access control concepts you'll already be familiar with, such as users, groups, and permissions, which get applied to individual API calls. So you can specify permissions to control which users can access specific services, the kinds of actions they can perform, and which resources are available, ranging from virtual machines, database instances, and even the ability to filter database query results. For instance, you can determine which users have MFA access to specific Amazon EC2 resources and can perform specific actions on those resources, such as who can launch an Amazon EC2 instance. And with AWS CloudTrail, you can keep logs of these kinds of activities, so it's easier to keep tabs on API activity and stay compliant. You can also integrate your existing identity system, such as Microsoft Active Directory, using standards-based federation technologies so that IT admins and developers can administer AWS without needing additional credentials. By using one central identity management system, you can spend less time and effort administering yet another environment while ensuring everyone gets what they need. We know that security is very important for Amazon Web Services customers, so we have always focused on security as a top priority. In addition to physical security certification, to providing fine-grained access and data locality controls, AWS provides the infrastructure building blocks so you can build sophisticated, secure applications which meet the regulatory and compliance standards your business requires, from ITAR to HIPAA. IAM lets developers focus on the features and functionality of their applications, while it does the heavy lifting on the security side of things. For instance, IAM can automatically rotate access keys on your virtual machine instances, ensuring that only trusted applications and users have appropriate access at any given time. There's no additional charge for IAM, and getting started is easy. Just click the Getting Started tab.
Okay. Okay, so to use AWS services in a scene, because scene needs credentials as well. Cognito. So it is a typo. It is a typo. You can use Cognito identity to create an identity pool that gives the scene access to a role with permissions to use AWS. Create a role that has permissions to any services that will access from scripts and permissions for components that use AWS services. So let's see. So I think what we're doing right now is just kind of an overview of what things are. It's not necessarily, just kind of introduce it. And then really the best way to learn how to do something is just to play with it and how these different services will interact and what they do. So we're doing a rundown of what these services are. Let's see. So that's getting started. Let's go ahead and read this a little bit with Cognito. So what is Cognito? So what you can do with Cognito is create user pools. So you know how if you go into a particular kind of account where you had to create your user profile, you know, that it generates a user pool, you know, so that whenever you go in there and log in again, it knows who you are. So you can quickly create your own directory to sign up and sign in users. I'm right here. And to store user profiles using Amazon Cognito user pools. User pools provide a user interface that you can customize to match your app. User pools also enable easy integration with social identity providers such as Facebook, Google, Amazon, and enterprise identity providers such as an active. But basically, you know how you can access something to connect with Facebook? That's what that is. Right. Let's see. I'm not sure what this one is. I didn't mean to do that. Let's go back. Okay. So Amazon Cognito federated identities access control for your resources. You can control access to your backend AWS resources and APIs through Amazon Cognito, so users of your app get only the appropriate access, which is what I was explaining earlier when it comes to IAM. You can map users to different roles and permissions and get temporary AWS credentials for accessing services like S3, DynamoDB, API Gateway, and Lambda. Okay, so let's see. Let's just go ahead and be done with that for right now, and let's kind of go on to see what else that we have here. Looks like it was the same thing. Okay. Let's go to Sumerian permissions. So this is the thing we saw earlier with IAM. And this is something we'll start having a deeper dive on whenever we actually get to the point of the lab. Okay. So that was IAM Incognito. So S3 resources. Let's go ahead and finish this page. So S3 resources. So S3 was actually one of the first things I learned about AWS. You got to start somewhere. And for some reason, I can't really recall why mine was S3. I guess it seemed the simplest. Visit the S3 documentation site here to walk through these steps. But let's just go ahead and watch this video.
Finding a way to store, distribute, and manage all your data is a big challenge.
Running applications, delivering content to users, hosting high-traffic websites, or backing up documents, databases, and email all require a lot of storage, and the need for more storage space keeps growing every day. Building and maintaining your own storage repository is expensive and time-consuming. First, you have to buy racks and racks of dedicated hardware and software. Then, to get it all up and running, you have to hire staff and set up complex processes to make sure your storage is performing well and backed up in case something fails. Adding more capacity costs money and time to deploy more servers, hard drives, and tape backup machines. And guessing how much capacity you need in the future is difficult. Getting this wrong means either not having the storage you need, or you overspend and end up with excess capacity that sits idle. What if there was a better way? Amazon Simple Storage Service, or Amazon S3, provides developers and IT teams with safe, secure object storage. It's easy to use, with a simple web services interface that can be used to store and retrieve any amount of data at any time from Amazon EC2 or from anywhere on the web. You just choose the region where you want your data stored, create a bucket, and you can begin storing data in S3. And with Amazon S3, you won't need a crystal ball to predict how much storage you're going to need in the future. You can store as much data as you want and access it when you need it. When it comes to storage, the last thing you want to worry about is losing valuable data. Amazon S3 helps make sure that doesn't happen by automatically making copies of your objects on multiple devices across multiple facilities. Amazon S3 also lets you preserve, retrieve, and restore every version of every object in an Amazon S3 bucket, so you can easily recover if something is accidentally deleted by users or application failures. With Amazon S3, you only pay for the storage you actually use. There's no minimum fee and no setup cost. And for data that you don't need very often, Amazon S3 helps reduce cost with configurable lifecycle policies that automatically archive Amazon S3 objects to Amazon Glacier, a low-cost storage archive service. We know that making sure your data is secure from unauthorized users is very important. And Amazon S3 gives you flexibility to control who can access your data with identity and access management policies, access control lists, bucket policies, and query string authentication. S3 also helps you securely upload and download your data with SSL encrypted endpoints and provides multiple options for encrypting data at rest. Amazon S3 helps you get the most out of your data by making sure it's stored safely, available when needed, and will scale as your needs grow. Getting started with Amazon S3 is simple. Sign up for an AWS account today, and you can create your first bucket in a few clicks.
Okay. So S3 is actually pretty useful. Like I said earlier, it's one of the first things that I learned about when it comes to AWS, and it's probably the thing I've used the most, to be honest. What I've used it before, what I'm currently using it for, and what I have used it before in the past is if I need to host a landing page, like this whole create, build, learn page. Let's see, I'll put up another tab. So I made it bit.ly because the URL is long, but let me show you. Maybe. Okay. So I made it bit.ly because this is what the actual URL is going to look like. Boom, boom, boom. Okay. So this is a landing page. I didn't buy a domain name for this web page. It is a web page. It is an active functional web page. I don't really call it a website because it's just one landing page, but I guess that's just getting into that we don't need to talk about. But anyways, you can look at the URL. So it's create, build, learn, AWS, and I think that's what I named my bucket. And then you can see that it's an S3. Maybe I just named it create, build, learn. But it is an AWS S3 bucket. And it's on the US East one, which I believe is Virginia. And then it's got, finishes it with Amazon AWS.com. So this is actually being hosted in an S3 bucket. If you're just creating a page for something like this, you don't need to buy a domain name. You're not worried about search engine optimization. You're not worried about any of that. you can just, use S3 bucket to host a landing page. Okay, it works. It works well. It doesn't cost a whole lot. It's not really hard to do. Other things that I've used S3 before is we're working on a project for here at Hocking College, and there's like 30 different WAV files, like audio files that are in the WAV format, and they are very large. And I usually put things in GitHub whenever we share and collaborate with other students in the classroom who are working on the project. But these 30 WAV files, they were too large to go into GitHub. So I'm like, so what I did do is, because S3 doesn't have any kind of capacity limit on how large you can store the files. There's no capacity limit in how big a file you can store in S3. So I've just put all of these WAV files into my S3 bucket, and they all have an individual URL link, very similar to this, and the students can access it. It works. So S3 has been useful for me for many things. Those are the most recent examples. So let's see. Let's go back to where we need to go. Yeah. So it looks like there's a lab. Let's see if this lab works. There's been some issues with labs, and you have to kind of do a workaround. I'm trying to remember how to log in on this one. Let's go do sign in with Google. Okay. So this is the little thing that happens whenever you try to access it. It says, sorry, introduction to S3 is currently unavailable. What you have to do, and I don't know why, this is, you have to look for it in the search, and then it should come up. Okay. So I'm going to make this, because this says it's going to be an hour, I'm going to make this another video. Let's kind of get this, let's call this a stopping point right now. So what we've gone over and this so far, and in regards to you need for Sumerian, is IAM in Cognito and S3. So our next video is going to be, actually doing the lab. Okay. So let me know if you have any questions, and thank you.